If this is too much for you, Diana, you can walk out that door and don't bother coming back. That's what my mother said, after I spent the last 2 years paying the mortgage on a house I didn't live in. After I skipped dinners, vacations, even heating in my own apartment, just so they could keep the lights on. No thank you, no, we're proud of you, just that sentence. And the silence that followed, it was louder than any slap. So I walked. I left the groceries on the kitchen counter, stepped out the front door, and for the first time in my life, no one followed me. Not my brother Brandon, who hasn't worked a day in 5 years. Not my dad, who always said I was too sensitive. Not even the woman who once held my hand after nightmares. Have you ever realized that your place in your family only existed when you were paying for it? That love in your home came with invoices and guilt trips. Because if you've ever been the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who broke so others could breathe, then this story, it was written for you. I wasn't born responsible. I was made that way. By age 16, I was scrubbing cafe tables after school. Not because I wanted extra spending money, but because we needed a new water heater, and my dad's plan was to wait until the old one exploded. By 17, I was riding my bike across town at 6 a.m. to mop bakery floors before calculus. And by 18, I had already stopped asking for anything. Birthdays, rides, attention, all came with conditions. Meanwhile, my brother Brandon, 4 years older, was sleeping till noon and quitting community college after 3 semesters. They called him sensitive. They said he needed time to find himself. When I got a full ride to Georgia State, my mother's first response was, "Couldn't you have picked somewhere closer to home?" When I landed my first job in finance, she said, "Well, who's going to take your father to his doctor appointments now?" No matter what I did, how hard I worked, how far I climbed, I was never the celebration, just the solution, the dependable one, the strong one, the one who would always pick up the pieces while they broke things with both hands. At 23, I moved into a studio apartment on the east side of Atlanta. Small, cracked paint, bad plumbing, but it was mine. 2 months later, my dad called. "Your mother's car needs repairs. Can you help out this once?" It was never just once. It became the gas bill, then the light bill, then the rent when Brandon needed time to regroup, then the mortgage when foreclosure notices started stacking up. By 26, I was spending more on their lives than my own. And the worst part, they never asked how I was doing. Not once. They assumed my silence meant comfort, that my consistency meant wealth, that my exhaustion was just a side effect of being so driven. I once tried to explain, tried to say, "I'm not okay, I'm tired." My mother told me, "Everyone's tired, Diana." But we don't give up on family. Except they had. They'd given up on me the moment they decided I was easier to lean on than love. 2 years ago, I started tracking every dollar I sent them, not to shame them, but to prove to myself I wasn't imagining the weight. $20,000, 2 years. That's how much it cost me to stay in the role of good daughter. And still, when I showed up with a trunk full of groceries after a 60-hour work week, my mother said, "It's not enough anymore." That was the day I realized, no matter how much I gave, they would always ask for more. Because when you teach people that your love comes with no limits, they will push you past everyone you never set. The pressure didn't break me all at once. It chipped away slowly, with every phone call that started with, "I hate to ask," and ended with, "You're a lifesaver, sweetheart." Every month the needs grew. A new furnace, a leak in the roof. Brandon's car suddenly stopped working. They never talked about cutting back. Never mentioned Brandon getting a job. Never asked what I was giving up to keep them afloat. It was like I didn't have a life of my own, just a wallet with a heart attached. When I skipped Christmas because of work, they said I was cold. When I showed up with groceries instead of gifts, they said I was cheap. But when Brandon forgot my birthday, "Don't be so sensitive, Diana. He's under a lot of pressure." Pressure? The man hadn't held a job longer than 3 months in 5 years. He slept in till noon, spent his days playing guitar, chain smoking, and blaming the world for not understanding his creative blocks. But they adored him, always had. "He's special," my mother would whisper. "He just needs time. Time, money, my life." I once overheard her on the phone with a cousin. bragging about Brandon's big artistic soul. Then, when asked about me, she said, "Oh, Diana, she's just working, same old. You know her?" Yeah, I did. I knew her better than anyone, and she was exhausted. I stopped going over for dinner, stopped answering their guilt-laced voicemails, stopped pretending it didn't sting every time they praised him for surviving while I was punished for thriving. But the breaking point didn't come from anger. It came from that night. I had just finished a Saturday shift, slept 4 hours the night before, and still drove 45 minutes with bags of groceries in the trunk. When I walked in, no one said hello. My dad was on the couch watching TV. Brandon was barefoot in the kitchen, eating the food I hadn't even unpacked. My mom stood by the fridge and said, "Diana, can we talk? What you're giving each month, it's not enough anymore." I stood there, still in my work clothes, hands full of canned goods and coffee, heart so heavy it felt like a second spine. "Not enough?" I asked. "We're falling behind," she said. "You make good money, we need more help. Brandon's still figuring things out." I looked at my brother, the man with nothing but excuses and a laundry list of complaints. And then I looked at her. She didn't blink, didn't thank me, didn't ask if I had enough left to give. She just said, "If it's too much, Diana, you can leave. We'll figure something out." I didn't say a word. I placed the grocery bag on the table, turned around, and walked out the door. Not in rage, not in sadness, just in silence. And that silence was the loudest thing I'd ever said. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no slamming of doors, no sobbing in the driveway. Just a quiet exit, a quiet goodbye to a life I was never allowed to fully live. I remember walking out into the cold night air, the plastic grocery bags still rustling on their kitchen counter behind me, and thinking, this is it. This is where I stopped carrying people who never once offered to carry me. I drove until the gaslight blinked, pulled into a random station off I-85, bought a bottle of water, filled up half a tank, and while standing there in the fluorescent silence, I blocked all three of them from my phone. My mother, my father, my brother. One tap, then another, and just like that, the lifeline they had been tugging on for years went still. I thought I'd feel guilty. I didn't. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a decade. The next morning, I woke up in my apartment. The heater barely worked. The sink was still leaking. There were unpaid bills and a fridge that echoed. But the silence, the fact that no one expected anything from me that day, it was beautiful. For the first time, I made coffee just for me. I didn't check my phone to see if someone needed help. I didn't hold my breath waiting for a crisis. I just stood by the window, holding a chipped mug, watching the sunlight crawl across my hardwood floor. And I smiled. Not a big, triumphant smile, just a small one, like my face was finally remembering what peace felt like. The days that followed were quiet, almost suspiciously quiet. No calls, no texts, no, "we miss you." I half expected someone to show up at my office, to knock on my door, to beg. But they didn't, and that hurt more than I expected, because it confirmed what I already feared. I wasn't loved. I was useful, and when I stopped being useful, I became invisible. 3 days later, my mother sent a single email. Subject, "Mortgage Diana. Your father just received another notice from the bank. We're at risk of losing the house. I don't know how you can sleep at night knowing that." No greeting. No, "Are you okay?" Just a reminder of what they thought I owed them. The truth? I had already paid more than they ever deserved. Over $20,000 across 2 years. 2 years of my 20s. Gone. Poured into a house I didn't live in, for people who never once said thank you. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I closed my laptop, walked outside, and went to the park. Just sat, breathed, existed. Because healing doesn't always look like epiphanies or breakthroughs. Sometimes it looks like sitting on a park bench and finally realizing you don't have to go back. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they gave you your name. I didn't plan revenge. There was no master strategy, no dramatic confrontation waiting to unfold. I just stopped answering, stopped rescuing, stopped bleeding for people who never once offered a bandage. And slowly, day by day, I started putting myself back together. At first, it was small things. Washing my sheets on a Sunday morning, cooking for one and savoring every bite, reading a novel without glancing at my phone, wondering who needed what. I relearned silence, not the suffocating silence of being ignored, but the soft kind, the kind that heals. My work improved. I got better sleep. I even started laughing again, like full-bodied, head-thrown-back laughter, the kind I hadn't felt since college. But peace, it turns out, doesn't go unnoticed, especially by those who thrived off your chaos. The messages started piling in. First, a voicemail from my dad. "Hey kiddo, I know you're upset, but the mortgage is serious. We need to talk." Then one from Brandon. "Real mature, Diana. Leaving your family high and dry. But sure, be the hero." Then my mother. "You think this is fair? You walk away and just expect everything to fix itself?" Fix itself. That's all I had ever done. And now that I wasn't available, the cracks were beginning to show. But what really shattered me wasn't what they said. It was what I found out. The mortgage I had been paying, $980 every month for nearly 2 years, wasn't being paid. Not in full, not even close. It started with a letter, a notice from the bank, mistakenly forwarded to my old email, the one I hadn't used since moving out. It stated the loan was delinquent, 8 months behind, 8 months, even before I left. Even while I was still draining my paycheck into their bottomless pit, they had stopped paying the mortgage. I logged into my bank records. My transfers were all there, clear, consistent, predictable. But the money, it had gone elsewhere. Groceries, gas, cable bills, Brandon's car repairs, one charge at a guitar supply store. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. Then I texted my father. I spoke with the bank. They said the mortgage has been past due since March. "Where did the money go?" he called instantly. "I can explain," he said. But he couldn't. Not really. He stammered. Blamed the economy. Said things got out of control. Said Brandon had been going through a rough patch, again. And when I didn't respond, my mother texted. "This is exactly why we don't tell you things. You always make us feel like garbage. Not, we're sorry, not, we messed up. Just guilt, projection, manipulation, wrapped in grief and tied with silence." I stared at my phone. Then I typed, "I won't be sending any more money. I won't be fixing this. And I won't be pulled back into a dynamic that broke me." I didn't wait for a reply. I turned off my phone, lit a candle, put on a jazz record, and sat on my couch with my legs tucked under me, like I used to when I was 12, reading books no one asked about. I could feel the tension buzzing behind every unopened message, the panic, the blame, but none of it was mine anymore. For the first time, the burden wasn't mine to hold, and I wasn't going to pick it up again. 3 days passed, then 5, then a week. I didn't check my phone, didn't open emails, didn't log into anything that could pull me back. I just existed. I walked to work. I made soup from scratch. I read articles I never had time for. And then, one rainy Sunday afternoon, I broke the silence. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed closure. I opened my phone. There were 17 missed calls, 9 voicemails, a handful of texts, some begging, some angry, all familiar. I listened to the last message from my mom. "If you don't step up, we're going to lose everything. Your father is barely speaking. Brandon's spiraling. Is that what you want? For this family to fall apart?" And I realized it had already fallen apart. I had just been the duct tape. I sent one final message, a single paragraph. "I have spent the last 10 years bailing out a system that never saw me as more than an ATM with a conscience. I am not responsible for Brandon's failures, Dad's avoidance, or the consequences of choices I didn't make. I love you, but I cannot save you." And I meant it. They didn't reply. For the next 2 weeks, there was silence. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, I got a knock on my door. I opened it to find my father. His shoulders slumped, his eyes red. He held a plain manila envelope. "I just came to give this," he said. His voice was smaller than I remembered. I opened the envelope. Inside, printouts of bank statements, confirmation that the money I sent hadn't gone to the mortgage. A note written in his handwriting. "You deserved the truth. We failed you. I'm sorry he didn't stay, didn't ask for forgiveness, just turned and walked back into the rain. I stood there, stunned. Not because of the confession, but because it was the first time in my entire life he had owned his part in anything. Later that evening, Brandon called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. No apology, just frustration. So you really think you're better than everyone now, living your little solo life while we're drowning? But we weren't, not anymore. This wasn't my storm to swim through. The final straw came from my mother, a text, one line. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I finally understood. Some people will never see your boundaries as protection. They'll only see them as betrayal, and that's not your fault. That night, I packed away the spreadsheet I kept for 2 years. Line after line of transfers, bills, balances, proof of effort, proof of sacrifice. I placed it in a folder, taped it shut, and wrote on the front, "Not yours anymore." Because the truth was, no one could drain me without my permission. And I was done signing off on my own suffering. It's been 3 months. 3 months since I walked out of that house with a bag of groceries and no intention of returning. 3 months since I blocked their numbers and started living without background noise. And for the first time in my adult life, the quiet isn't heavy, it's holy. I still think about them sometimes. My father's tired eyes, Brandon's lazy grin, my mother's voice laced with guilt, even when asking for help. But now I think about them with distance, not pain. They haven't changed, not really. Brandon still posts cryptic quotes on social media. My mother still sends emails once a week, alternating between icy silence and weaponized nostalgia. And my dad, he sent one birthday card. No gift, just 5 words scribbled inside. I hope you're doing well. And somehow, that was enough. Because I stopped expecting them to be what they never were. Supportive, accountable, loving without conditions. And I started being that for myself. Now, my mornings begin with light, with music and coffee, with the kind of peace I used to think only existed for other people. I redecorated my apartment, painted the walls a soft cream, hung up art that made me feel strong. I even adopted a cat named May, who bites everyone but me. I don't feel guilty for smiling anymore, or for saying no, or for sleeping 8 hours without checking who might need saving. Because I've learned that being a good daughter doesn't mean being a broken one, and being loving doesn't mean being available for abuse. So if you're listening to this and wondering whether it's okay to set boundaries with people who raised you, I want you to know, you are not selfish. You are not cruel. You are not wrong. You are allowed to be free. Because sometimes the most honorable thing you can do for your family is refuse to be the one they keep hurting. What did you think of Diana's story? Have you ever had to walk away from family just to save yourself? Let me know in the comments below. If you support Diana's decision to reclaim her peace, vote number 1. If you think family should always come first, no matter what, vote number 7. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to EN True Tales for more powerful stories of quiet courage every single day.